Hi, my name is Reverend Jerry Streets. I'm the pastor of the Dixwell Avenue Congregational United Church of Christ in New Haven, Connecticut. Dixwell Church is the oldest African-American congregational church founded in New Haven in 1820. As many of you know, this is Black History Month, and so we are celebrating Black History Month by featuring members of our congregation who are indeed history makers. I welcome to this conversation today Mrs. Margo Taylor and her husband, Rueben Taylor. Hi, Margo.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, thanks for joining me today. Hello, Rueben.
Hi, Reverend, how are you?
Okay. Well, Margo, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I have lived in New Haven all my life, and I was the first one of my siblings to be born in a hospital. Apparently, before that time, most people of color, the children were born at home.
Oh, I see.
So I was born, it was called New Haven Hospital at that time. And I grew up in the Elm Haven housing project and on Southwest Drive. And at that time, we were just one block from Dixwell Avenue Congregational Church. It was at 100 Dixwell then, and my parents were members.
Wonderful, wonderful. And after high school in New Haven, I understand you pursued a career as a professional nurse.
Yes, I wanted nursing because at that time, not a lot of other professions or occupations were really available for women, not just women of color, but in general. And nursing and teaching were always two that welcomed women from the very beginning of time, I think. And I did want to be able to go to another state or city to learn, just to see what other places are like. And one of the places I chose and was accepted to was Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Yeah. And it's a very well-known hospital in the US. It's still a very prominent place. It's associated with Harvard instead of Yale. That's one of the differences.
So when you finished your nursing education and training, where did you start practicing being a nurse?
I came back here because as I was engaged then to Rueben. And so I came back here to work, and I worked at New Haven, or it was called Grace New Haven when I started, I believe. And then it became Yale New Haven Hospital. And I worked there from 1959 to 1999. And
wow, 40 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
It said 40 years.
Yeah, yes, and I've been retired since that, since 1999. It's wonderful to think that I've had this much time. I was able, before I retired, several years, I did attend Southern Connecticut, and I received a BS from there.
So the 40 years that you worked as a nurse in New Haven, what were some of the roles you played at Yale New Haven Hospital, formerly Grace Hospital?
Yes, I spent the most years in the Women's Center, and we took care of women of all ages, starting with teenagers and right up until post-menopausal women or women in their 60s, 70s. But most of my patients were younger women who they still keep in touch with me today. And we tried to make sure that as teenagers, they were getting the proper and regular prenatal care, and would see people that they knew when they came, not see a different practitioner each time. And we also had nurse midwives who worked with us and took care of many of the patients. And I think the patients really appreciated what they got from us, because we did not make them feel that we did not want to take care of them. They knew that we wanted to take care of them and that we were there for them.
Were you one of the first, if not the first, African American women to be in that role at Yale New Haven Hospital?
I'm pretty sure there was one other head nurse before me, a woman of color. There may have been a second one, but there weren't any of us, beyond that number.
Yeah.
That were head nurses at the time. That was the title, or supervisors.
Who influenced you, or what influenced you to become a nurse?
Well, that is, sometimes I have to ask myself that. I believe it was my father the most. My father was born in this area, born in Connecticut, and he graduated from Hill House. It was called New Haven High School, I believe, when he graduated, because my parents had 3 children, 2 years apart, and then it was 17 years before I came. So my father had gone to Howard for 2 years, but his parents could not afford beyond that. And at that time, when he was a student, there were not a lot of scholarships or grants, available. So he dropped out of Howard, and he worked at Yale University as a janitor for a lot of years. And he had wanted to be a doctor, I believe. So he wanted me to be a nurse. He influenced me the most, I think. And I found out that I did enjoy working with people, and it was something that I could do.
Now, you and Rueben have been married for, I think, 62 years. And Rueben, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Sanford, North Carolina. And it was a little area near Fort Bragg, the Air Force base. And that's where, my people came from.
What brought you to New Haven?
Yeah. Well, my my uncle worked at Malibu Iron Foundry in Branford, and he was the first African American to get that type of a role. And it was fun coming up to New Haven in the summertime, but my uncle told my mother, I think it's time for you to get out of New York, because the drug population is getting too bad. And before, it used to be guys would just get together. If they didn't like each other, they'd have a fist fight. But this time, guns came into play, because quite naturally.
Now, how long ago are you talking about?
I would say, it had to be
40s, before you went to service.
Before I went into service in the 40s.
I see.
And
so you wound up in New Haven, and how did you enter to the professional field? And tell us a little bit about what you did professionally.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is, one of my good friends, Dr. Mayo, Reggie Mayo, and another one of the persons that I met who was instrumental in, just being a good friend. And, you know, we would talk a lot, and I learned a lot from him, and I'm sure he learned a lot from me. But it was fun to have my cousin come down to New York in the summertime, you know, and we would, you know, my uncle down there, he was the superintendent of one of the buildings. And so we used to like to get on the dumbwaiter, which, you know, had ropes that you pull up to each apartment, and the people would leave their trash, and we would take it downstairs to be picked up.
But tell us a little bit about your profession. What did you enter into?
Well, the thing of it is, like I said,
How did you get into housing?
Yeah, well, I got into housing because of a friend of mine who, Steve Whetstone. And Steve had 2 kids, and he was the pastor in Guilford. And we got along famously, and he told me, well, you know, the way you get along with people, you need to do this so that you can help others. Because it's
so. Can you tell us just briefly, what is it that you did? Were you a realtor or housing developer, or what did you do?
Yeah, well, the thing of it is, that was one of the things with the job. You know, they wanted you to be able to have a role with people. He said, you know, you're perfect for the job. He says, you know, we get together and.
But I'm trying to make sure our audience understands what it is you did. Were you a real estate agent, or did you run housing developments?
Yeah, it was housing development.
I see. All right. Well, let me ask you, both of you, what legacy would you like to leave your children and grandchildren?
I think the thing that we want them to do is to appreciate what, you know, we were able to do that others weren't. You know, we were able to basically leave a legacy where, you know, the kids would be able to go to school, you know, and they didn't have to worry about whether or not their parents could afford it or not, but it just basically was a good role for me. And the fellow that, like I said, lived next door to me, you know, he was police chief for the city of New Haven. And we just, you know, hit it off. We were, you know.
So you want to leave a legacy of education to your children and grandchildren?
True.
Oh, okay. Margo, how about you? What legacy would you want to leave your children and grandchildren?
I would say education and service to others, not to see education as a noose around your neck, but as a path to freedom. And that you do have to put something in it in order to get something back. And it's not something that should be taken lightly. It's extremely important, and people need, and especially people of color, to be resilient about it, to be definite about it, and not to let people discourage you from being a good student. People used to, I know as growing up, sometimes children of color, they're criticized, made fun of by their own people as well as sometimes white people. So we need to know that we are smart, we have the capability of learning, and that learning helps us.
All right. Well, Margo and Rueben Taylor, married 62 years. Margo, a professional nurse. Rueben, a realtor and housing developer. Both of you leaving a legacy of hard work and education. You are part of the congregation of the Dixwell Avenue Church, and you are also history makers. Thank you for this time.
I would just like you to see that I'm wearing this medallion that was given to me and a lot of other Dixwell members in 2019. And it says, Dixwell Church Pillars of Wisdom. And I appreciate this so much. And there were other people who received it too. So I just want to show that.
Well, thank you both again. Take care.
Yes, thank you too. Thank you for all that you do.
Yes, thank you so much, Sherry.
Hi, my name is Jerry Streets. I'm the senior pastor of the Dixwell Avenue Congregational United Church of Christ in New Haven, Connecticut. Dixwell Church, as we fondly refer to it, is the oldest African-American congregational church founded in New Haven in 1820. We are celebrating Black History Month all over our nation and indeed throughout the world. And it is my honor to share with you and introduce to you members of our congregation who in their own right are also history makers. So joining me today for this conversation is Dr. Kristen Nwanyanwu, who will share with us, she helps me with her name all the time, share with us a little bit about her background, and I think you will be inspired. Welcome, Dr. K, if I may call you Dr. K.
For sure. You call me whatever you want, Reverend
Oh,
Streets.
no,
You're the man.
So, Dr. Nwanyanwu, where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I'm originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go Blue. So I'm born and raised there and stayed there for college. So I'm a Michigander.
And where did you attend college?
So I went to University of Michigan. So I actually graduated from Pioneer High School, which is across the street from the football stadium.
Oh,
and then I was awarded the Bentley Scholarship. So I had a full scholarship to study at the University of Michigan in the Honors College there. So that's what I did.
Oh, wow. And what was your college major?
I majored in African-American studies and biochemistry. So I had an honors degree in African-American studies where my thesis was placing slavery in modernity, which will actually come up a little bit later, I'm sure.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. Yes, I'd like to hear more about that.
Yep.
And did you then go into the work world after college, or did you pursue further studies?
So I actually went straight to medical school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Now it's the Perelman School of Medicine. And there I studied, and I also took a little time and went to the Wharton School and got an MBA as well. So I did a 5-year MD MBA program there. So
you have a training background as a physician and also in the business world.
Yes, I did. I was an activist in college. So around the time I went to college was the affirmative action trials in the University of Michigan, which is a really big deal. I was an intervener on the case when I was in high school. And so it just made sense for me to keep that work up, and in really kind of thinking about how to conceptualize access to college, particularly for folks that look like me, to be able to access that next generational wealth. And I really thought that was important. So I spent a lot of time with the Black Student Union working on those issues. And then when I got to medical school, I knew I was going to do something in that world, but I had to figure out how to pair the two. A lot of times when I saw an equity, I noticed that there was a financial or economic cause behind it or reason behind it. I've been always the one to ask questions. Why can't the patients get what they want? Why don't we have everything? It's a very rich nation. everyone should have what they need. What's the problem? And the answers I kept getting were, about things I hadn't studied. I didn't study econ or finance or any of that. So I looked across the street and I said, well, there's a place over there. They seem to know a lot about that, Wharton. And so I went over there and studied. And what I didn't know is that most people that were there already knew business, but that was okay. They taught me a lot and I learned a lot. And I wanted to make sure I had the ethos or the credibility that if I was eventually afforded the opportunity at the table, that people would take my ideas seriously and to be able to think through solutions that were sustainable for communities that were historically excluded.
Mm-hmm. What influenced you to go into medicine, or was that something you always wanted to do from childhood?
Yeah, I think it's a couple reasons. So when I was a little girl, my dad used to always call me Dr. Harris. So if he had anything as much as a paper cut, he would say, Dr. Harris, come over here and look at this. And I would get the cream or the Bactine, whatever it was back then, and put a Band-Aid on it. And so I think that was something that was there. I grew up, my brother that's closest to me had a brain tumor before I was born. We're 13 years apart. And so by the time I was growing up, he had paralysis and a seizure disorder. And I was really in charge of a lot of things as a kid. So I, knew where the medicine was. I understood what seizures were. I understood those types of things. And I really think that really influenced my interest in wanting to be a physician. So it was a big deal to be able to grow and learn from him, and then to kind of traverse along that path. When you grow up with someone that has a lot of chronic medical problems, I think it's a story in a lot of Black doctors where they say, you know what, I'm going to help out. I'm going to help figure this out. So I went.
You have one brother?
So actually that brother has since passed, rest his soul. But I have another brother as well who is an engineer, and he is in Ohio. That's my oldest brother. So his name is Chuck. So he's there and he's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. So you're the only sister?
I am. I'm the baby girl, and it comes out. And you can just ask my husband.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's quite remarkable that your father would refer to you as doctor as a child. That's wonderful seed planting.
Yeah, I think it was. And, he was always so brilliant. My father's one of the, true geniuses that I've ever met. He has this mathematical brain, and he has the ability to just hold information in a way that I hadn't even noticed. I remember when I was interviewing for colleges, I got accepted to Harvard, and they do like a reception. They do a reception for all the local kids that get in so you can go and talk. And actually, the professor that interviewed me asked my family for a ride to this reception, which is odd. We didn't know him at all, but he said, can I ride with you? And my mother and I were in the back, and I just remember the conversations that they were having, philosophy and all these things that I had no idea my dad even knew about. Mm-hmm. And he was having this conversation with this professor at the University of Michigan. I just still remember being really impressed by that. So all that is to say that I just, had that type of environment, with the kind of thirst for knowledge and a drive to do your own thing. My mother is a strong woman, and she likes to do her own thing. And I am learning more and more that I'm very similar. And I'm sure we'll get to that in some of the stuff that I am doing now, because it's definitely my own thing. But my mom is, brilliant in her own right, and particularly in getting things done and being a good advocate. As you can imagine, like a special needs child in that generation, a Black special needs child in that generation, you have to be able to make your needs known and be strong. And, she was a full-time working mom and, making it happen for us. And when I think about it, it is just phenomenal just to even imagine.
So she was or is a special needs person?
Well, no. So my brother was.
Your brother.
She was the mother of a special needs kid.
Of course.
Exactly. So she was managing that in a full-time career. She was a middle school counselor by the time I came along. And just the things that she was able to navigate is really, really phenomenal.
What was your dad in the medical field?
No, so he ran a math department at the local high school. He taught AP calculus
Oh, okay.
forever. And he would in the summers go to Clemson and grade the tests, and he, received national teaching awards. And he had a year where all his students got fives, and which is the highest score that you can get on that exam. And he really had and still has this analytical mind and ability to teach that is really unparalleled. I think about it, and my parents used to always tell me, everybody can't teach. Right. And it's a really, really wonderful gift that the two of them had. And especially my dad, to be able to break down really complicated concepts like advanced level calculus.
So your parents obviously are very influential. You went off to college, you went to medical school. And did you go right into practicing medicine after medical school and the MBA?
So I went right to residency. So I went to residency. I was an intern in Philadelphia. And in medical school is when I met Kalechi, is when I met my husband. And so in the same year, I was an intern, then I got married, and then we moved to Michigan, back to Ann Arbor, for me to do my residency. So I did my residency at home in the University of Michigan.
Well, you have a melodious last name that I'm still trying to do justice to.
Me too.
Could you say a little bit about your spouse, your Spice?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm assuming that your last name is his last name.
Yes. My maiden name is Harris, so we're Nwanyanwu. My mother-in-law will say all the letters in it in a beautiful Igbo tongue. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I'll keep trying. So they immigrated from Nigeria, his parents, when they were in college, and they went to Wisconsin. And then they made their way to California. So he actually grew up in LA, grew up in Southern California. And then he went to a beautiful boarding school, the Kate School in California, and then went to University of Pennsylvania undergrad. So when I met him, he had finished undergrad and he was working there. And then his roommate actually was in our wedding, as a wonderful friend of ours. But there were 4 separate friends of mine that when I was moving to Philly, they said, hey, you have to meet our guy. And it was his roommate. Oh. So we ended up kind of running in the same circles. And what I really love about my husband, and the same thing that I love about him to this day, is that he is very comfortable in his own skin. And at a time where I was in med school and, just kind of figuring out my own way, sometimes, being a doctor or being on your way to a doctor can be really intimidating. And, he seemed to be undeterred by that. He seemed to think that it was fine, but not too lofty. I wasn't on some pedestal, but he was also very proud of what I was doing. And that continues to this day. And
is he in the medical field as well?
No, he works at Twitter.
Oh, he's a Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, he works at Twitter. He works in their compensation department, stock options and that kind of thing. Yeah, no, he's incredible. That's the kind of brain he has. But so no, he's not in the medical field, but we just were able to connect because we just have so much fun. Sure. In our partnership together, I have been able to do things that I don't think I would have been able to do by myself. Like, he just adds a piece that I needed to be able to get where I need to go. Our friends will laugh at us because we're also very different. The way we think through problems and our lens on the world is all completely different, which is beautiful for our girls, but makes for interesting conversations. And so I am definitely, as you'll hear when you talk about what I do, a dreamer, right? I am the one that is like, I see this thing, I see a new world, I see a brave thing. And, and he's like, well, what about the cost of that thing? Or like, the expenses or the danger, or, like
he comes in with the MBA side of you, right? Well, I will ask you about your family, your children in a moment. But tell us a little bit about your area of practice and research now.
Sure. So I am a vitreoretinal surgeon, which means I am an ophthalmologist. I'm an eye surgeon. And my work is to repair the retina. The retina is the thin lining nerve tissue on the back of the eye that sends information to the brain so that you can see. My work is in disparities in diabetic retinopathy, diabetic eye disease, and Black, brown folks, indigenous folks, people in low resource communities are more likely to go blind. They're more likely to present at more severe stages of disease. Diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of blindness in working age folks in the United States. And so it's something that I care deeply about, that I'm really passionate about. And so our lab, I run the site saving engagement and evaluation in New Haven lab. That's the SCENE lab. And we use lots of different methods to try to figure out how to address health disparities. So we do big data projects where we look at trends and try to understand kind of national concepts of how we can intervene. We do qualitative research, which means we ask questions. Actually, Deacon Norcott is helping our team to really figure out what are the themes that are coming from our community so that we can help intervene in a way that makes sense to community. And then we build interventions. So we're just launching a pilot program with Project Access New Haven, where we're going to stratify the patients, which means like just figure out who's at highest risk for diabetic retinopathy and then pair them up with a patient navigator that will help them to do just that. And that means like navigate their health lives so that they can make sure to be able to find room and find time to get their eyes checked. So it's a really awesome journey. I am on a career development award that is funded by the NIH, the National Eye Institute, and I'm an assistant professor at Yale University.
Yeah, wonderful. If you could whisper into the ear, metaphorically, obviously, the whisper into the ear of Black America in general, people of color, and and maybe sometimes just to women, what would you whisper to Black America in general, and what would you whisper in the ears of women about what it takes or what it means to be a success and live a meaningful life?
I think I would say that you have it already. I think a lot of times there's this emphasis on getting the thing and doing and being next, but the pandemic has taught me just about being mindful. I had to learn to meditate. I was home with my 2 girls and it was just too stressful. So I had to learn how to sit in peace. And, I obviously am a woman of faith and I believe that God has designed this path for me. And it's been really important for me to know that I have all the things for this moment. And so whatever you think is missing or whatever you think is lacking, you have all the tools that you need for this moment and use them, and they're unique. And I think a lot of times because we've been historically excluded as Black folks, as women, these spaces aren't designed for us. So if you get there, a lot of times they don't know what to do with you because they're like, I'm not sure, right? And so what happens is you end up being guided or molded in a way that is inauthentic, right? Like I cannot do the things that white men do, and nor should I, because I am a Black woman. And so I need to tune into those characteristics and the whole me that includes that so that I can really offer my gift to the universe. And I think it is in that moment, it is in those things to know that I have enough to do the things that God has designed me to do. And I have them in me already. And as I sharpen them going forward, yes, I will have more things. But at this moment, at this time, in this thing, I have everything that I need.
That might be connected to how you might respond to the question of what legacy do you hope to leave your children and future generations, maybe your grandchildren?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to do what I'm supposed to do here.
Right.
And hoping that the things that I am supposed to do here and now will build a better world for my girls. When I think about my girls, I want them to be good citizens, really. You know, like the details of it, you know, how they'll be in the world and what they'll do. Like they're very privileged children. And I really just want them to be good stewards of, you know, of everything, right? Of the resources that they have, of the earth, of the gifts that they have been given. And, you know, if I were to, you know, get to the end, my grandmother passed away, she was 104, right? So hopefully I'll be here for a while. But if I get to the end, I would love for people to say, she did what she was supposed to do with those things. Mm-hmm. And to be proud of me for using my voice to say the things that I know are true, and to be able to help to uplift whoever can come, and maybe even inspire some folks on the way.
Tell us a little bit about your two angels, your two little girls.
Yes, I have two girls. I have a 5-year-old. Her name is Iva. She is creative and brilliant and a wonderful dancer with a mathematical mind. She will sit in the floor in her outfit that is designed with a cape and a slinky attached and program her robot. So I just think that she's delightful, and I just love the freedom that she's holding. And I spend a lot of time trying not to mute her or mess it up, because I think she's going to need it. And then I have Chioma Lena, and Chioma is 3 years old. And the best way to describe Chioma is that 3 months before her 3rd birthday, she had convinced everyone she was turning 5, and she wouldn't take any alternative options because her sister was 5 and that was it. And then on the day of her birthday, I asked her how things went, and she said, "Mommy, I turned 3. And I said, "Well, what happened?" She said, "Well, after 2 comes 3. Yeah. And so Chioma Lena, exactly. Chioma Lena knows exactly what she wants all the time. And whether it is Spider-Man or a tutu, she will tell you all the things. She has a beautiful voice and a beautiful mind, and the two of them together are going to do some awesome things in this world. And once again, I got to just try to stay out of the way.
Yeah. Well, I deeply appreciate your time. You're very inspiring. Your whole family is, and I'm sure the audience listening to and watching this conversation feels the same way. Is there anything that you like to add that's come to mind as we close?
I just want to say how much I love the Dixwell church family. And if that's okay, when we were pregnant, we were church shopping. We had just moved here, and we moved to New Haven pregnant for me to start my job at Yale. And I grew up in a church, and I was looking for some place to raise my girls, and I was pregnant. And we just kept showing back up at Dixwell. And every time we showed up, everyone was so happy to see us. And it was such a warm, wonderful place. And the way that Dixwell speaks truth to power and social justice and is, affirming and loving and holds space for my girls and my family is unparalleled. And I just love it. I just love being a member.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your time.
Sure. Thanks so much.
Okay. Be well.